Hi, welcome back to my channel. This is Sandra on Beyond TechSolutely, a place for understanding tech and creating exciting narratives around it. If this is your first time, thank you for joining us. Please do not forget to subscribe and like. Today, we're going to be talking about the future of education. That's Edutech. Joined with me today is the Edutech entrepreneur, Takunda Rukanda. He has his own Edutech platform, and I cannot wait for you guys to see what he is doing into the educational sector. As I always say, COVID-19 has been the great accelerator to technology, and we have seen different sectors going through the digital transformation. Educational sector has not been spared. Okay, so joined with me today is Takunda Rukanda. He is an Edutech entrepreneur. Hi, Takunda.
Hi, Sandra. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on to Beyond TechSolutely and sharing your amazing products that you are working on. So would you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and how this product came about?
Okay, so my name is Takunda Rukanda, as you've already said. I am an entrepreneur basically in the edutech kind of space. So education has always been my passion. So after I went to high school at Watershed College, what I decided to do was to actually teach for about a year and a half. I was the junior master there. So just covering up for some of the classes, doing some coaching, et cetera, et cetera. So teaching has always been part of my passion. So after going to university and just, studying in China and then obviously doing some exchange programs in South Korea, US, and my experience and everything, even though technology wasn't actually the area that I studied specifically when I was doing my degrees, it was always a passion. So just after I completed my master's, I decided, actually just before I even completed my master's, it was something that I had already started to get into, in terms of education. So how did I get into it? Well, I started off as an intern in a company in Beijing, and they had this amazing platform that they use, and I still work with them directly. The name of the company is Light Beijing, and they had this platform that was basically for Mandarin tutoring, very advanced platform, allowed for great interaction online with international students from all around the world. So this is, and then after that internship kind of set up, I really enjoyed working there, and I think that's where my passion was originally birthed, and I then decided to set up companies there and there just to get this edutech thing going on. So yeah, so I love education, I love technology, and I love the direction that technology, I love the direction that edutech is taking and the impact that technology has on education in this current time. And with COVID hitting and some of the circumstances that are happening right now, it's become more and more critical to have obviously a lot of edutech solutions that allow institutions, companies, universities to basically be able to continue to teach and to relay that kind of information through the degree courses online. So I'm happy to be part of that solution.
Oh, okay, nice. Well, that's very detailed. So do you speak Mandarin yourself?
Yes, I do. I speak Mandarin. So I have this little habit of, wherever I go, I try as much as I can to, learn the language. So even it's just the basics. So I do speak Mandarin. I think on a conversational level, I think I can have a decent conversation in Mandarin. I can also text and write in Mandarin as well. And a bit of Korean, but I've forgotten. Yeah, I've
Obviously.
Yeah.
So I wanted to find out, like with your solution, how has
Yeah.
the usage been with COVID in the past
Yeah.
few months with the lockdowns and everything? How has it changed from before COVID and now during the COVID times?
I think right now there's more of a demand basically for these kind of edutech solutions. So specifically for learning management systems. Because COVID kind of forced many institutions, which obviously were using the traditional way of teaching, which is face to face, to now adopt more of these learning management platforms that allow them to have like real-time live learning lessons, and for some institutions actually pre-recorded lessons. So what I found is that there's obviously more of a demand, and there's so many institutions right now that are in need of these kind of solutions. And so what we do is we provide very interactive learning management systems that allow organizations, universities, all types of institutions to come on board and and it's really interactive. I mean, the interfaces that we basically work with are really interactive. And so what I would say is there has been a huge demand, and it's become more and more relevant. And so many institutions, as soon as COVID hit, realized that, hey, this is the way to go. And just as we saw even in the workplace that previously it was believed that people would be most productive if they went to the office, but according to a lot of research that has taken place from many of these consultancy companies, they found that productivity has actually increased online. And it's the same thing. So many students right now have still been productive and have still made progress, even though the learning experience has been delivered online. Obviously, that's kind of pushed a lot of people, specifically teachers and educators, to be innovative in the ways that they basically will relay a lesson. But I guess it's all part of the process. I would say, obviously, the COVID has affected that in terms of, has affected the edutech space in terms of the high demand that's now, there for these learning management platforms. And we'll see what the future holds in terms of that.
Oh yeah, that's very interesting. Like I always say, COVID-19 was the greatest accelerator to technology, and we just need to jump onto technology, because if we are not going to do that, we're just going to be locked down at home, bored, use the
Absolutely.
yeah. And I'm not sure if this is going to go away anytime soon, but hence actually cut off at the cost, like transportation to school and all these educational.
Right. And one of the, just to mention on that, and one of the things that we've noticed as well, because what we also do is we do assist students to go study abroad in different countries, in India, Canada, and so on. And so what we've actually found is most universities have actually adjusted. And so traditionally, whereas we would have to send students to go abroad, and they'd have to pay tuition, and they'd have to pay for accommodation, and a lot of those expenses, even, the flight cost, et cetera, insurance when they get there. Right now, the costs have obviously significantly reduced for the parents, because now the students can still learn and they can still do that online. So the cost, it definitely has kind of led to less cost to that end.
Okay, so your target market is for high school. Is it like universities or primary school? What's your target audience?
So this is obviously one of the core areas of our business. So it's obviously, if I was to summarize what we do, it's education, everything related to education, but now more of an edutech push. So we target high school students that from all around Africa and the world who would like to study abroad, and we help them with the entire process of going to study abroad. So to high school students, but also people who have already completed their first degree and probably want to do a master's degree or a PhD. So we help them with the entire process, and we've helped many of our students to go abroad. In fact, I believe about 90% of our students who we've sent abroad have actually gone on scholarship, whether it's a partial scholarship or a full scholarship. So we've basically been helping out to that end. So that's how we kind of deal with that. So this is how we know that the universities right now are saying, hey, because of the situation with COVID, many of the students will now have to do those lessons online. And obviously for many parents right now, the cost has significantly been lowered.
Okay. So is your platform friendly for most parents? Because I know most parents, especially in Zimbabwe, never being able to interact or interface such a very vast or complicated system. It's not really complicated, but I mean technical system. It's user friendly for parents, for them like to monitor their child's performance or tracking whatever that they are learning. Is it user friendly? How do you recommend this to any other person to use it?
Okay. Yeah, so let me speak specifically about our platform, the Taksglobal platform that we basically do deploy a couple of courses. Our target market mostly for our platform has been professionals. So we offer courses in cybersecurity awareness, data privacy, those kind of areas. So that's where we mostly are. But I would say that the interface is pretty intuitive. So we try to make it as intuitive as possible. So from the front end, for the front end users, it's something that's, much easier to navigate. But obviously the back end requires a bit of training. So if you're going to be an administrator, for example, you obviously have to go through training as to learn how to do the actual implementation. So what we actually do, so we manage the whole process. So we are also we don't only provide the learning management platforms where the lessons take place, but we also manage the entire e-learning design and development process. So everything, so everything from creating manuals or transcribing lessons in whatever language they are, and then everything from the recording to the sound engineering to the graphic design. So we actually manage the entire process until we actually reach to the implementation of the course, where you put it online live and then it's it's streamed live. So we're actually part of the entire process of the e-learning design and development solution. What we obviously try to do is, number one, we try to make the course itself, because it starts off with the course. Okay? And right now, if you just do a course online and there's just a PPT and you're just talking and it's not as interactive. So the kind of courses that we create are very interactive. We have action graphics at work. Sometimes we even use animations to make the learning experience, even for older people, quite pleasant and much easier to follow, just to keep their attention. And obviously the approach now, and what we found is effective, is to have courses with information in bit sizes. So if you have a pretty long session or pretty long course, it can obviously deter the concentration of the students. So what is actually advised by a lot of psychologists and people who are engaged in the studies of the brain, neurology, et cetera, is that they obviously recommend for breaks to be taken. So after every 20 minutes, take a break and try to keep it short and sweet. And so we found that to be interactive. So before we even get to the interface that allows maybe the users to navigate the platform, we try to make sure that the course itself is structured in such a way that it's easy. And we even get into the psycholinguistics of the course creation. So how the listener or the person who's going through the course will receive the information when they're actually listening. So we've actually studied and said, and when you create a course, in order to maintain the attention of the person, or in order to have the person fully understand what you're trying to portray, the best ways to do that is to say it this way or to communicate it this way. And in terms of visualization and visual presentation, this is what is most captivating. So everything from there to the actual interfaces is what we're involved in. So I would say, I mean, I know I've said this a lot there, but I would say it's not just the interface that's important, but also the actual platform and also the actual course itself and how it's designed and how it's developed. And I think the future of education is going to look primarily at how effective we are at creating some of these courses, for organizations, et cetera, and those who are able to adapt and basically move the time and really capitalize on the research and the information that's outside with regards to that, of those that are going to excel. Yeah.
I love the part where you say you work and also part of the cost prevention, because most solutions that I've seen, people just see a tech idea and they want to implement it and then fit in an operation. But for you, you have worked with the operation, things that they actually do, even if it's in a traditional way. Try to understand the curriculum, how it's supposed to be done. And then you have used technology to enhance the process and the delivery of this solution to people, which I actually really admire. And I think you're actually doing something very great. So I don't know, how are the subscription for your solution? How expensive or how affordable is it? How cheap is it? Can anyone just come onto your platform and get a course? Do you get accreditation for doing lessons on your platform? Yeah, tell us more.
Okay. So we basically have two things. I think there are two questions in what you said. So I would say for the learning management platform, we basically will price it based on the requirement of the customer. So if a company says we have about 100 users and we would like to start doing our onboarding training or some of our trainings online using our own learning management platform, then we will basically quote them based on their requirements. So we obviously offer customized kind of solutions. And we have, on the learning management platform side, we have two kinds of solutions that a client could choose from. So they could, for example, have a real-time live learning session. So let me give you an example of what that looks like. It's like we're on Zoom right now. So that would be a learning solution that allows, live trainings to take place. And obviously the interface for the learning platforms that we provide to that end are more interactive. So they allow for, PPTs to be played, for videos to be played, question pop-ups can come up, multiple choice blocks that a user can actually click and choose an answer. And in real time, you can get the report to say 25% of the class said this, 25. So that's one of the solutions, the real-time live learning system platform. And then we have another solution, which is pre-recorded. So the pre-recorded kind of learning management platform where you have the videos and they've already been created. And then, you simply upload, put the quizzes on, and everything is basically automated in the system. So we do offer both solutions, but the pricing depends on the actual requirements of the client. So we're looking at anything from, $5,000 going up as an average for the learning management platform. But obviously, depending on the size of the organization, the number of users who will be using it, and the specific requirements, because we have clients who obviously will come and say, hey, we want it to have this kind of the translation function, or we wanted to have this, can you make it do that? So we tailor make everything according to the requirements of the client, and that determines the pricing. Now, the second part of your question would be to deal with the actual courses that we do offer. I guess it depends on the kind of model that we fall in, the type of course. So some of our courses right now, what we push mostly are B2B. So what we would have, for example, is a cybersecurity awareness course. That's one of the courses that, for example, we are pushing out. Because obviously it's critical right now. Many companies have started to migrate online, and cybercrime is increasing. And I think about 2 years ago, in terms of cybercrime, we're looking at 2 trillion in losses, like worldwide, globally, 2 trillion. It's a $2 trillion industry. So, I mean, there've been so many losses that have happened as a result of cybercrime. So basically, we have a course that helps organizations and trains them and equips the employees working within the organization to be cyber aware, to know how to navigate social engineering, which obviously is a critical issue right now, in which you find that cyber criminals will come, pose as genuine people, give a call, hey, I'm this person, and they might pretend like probably they're from the other branch of the company or from another country globally, and they slowly acquire information that they then use to launch some really serious attacks. So we train organizations how to be prepared. So we do cybersecurity employee awareness training. So that's obviously fully online. And that solution will obviously depend on the number of of delegates that will be coming from an organization. So the pricing is basically based on the numbers. So yeah, nothing fixed. But if it's a one-on-one, yeah, I mean, you're talking maybe something from $50 and above per person. If it's like the numbers are just like one person coming to purchase the course. But if you're looking for a huge number, then obviously the price is discounted, economies of scale. So yeah, so that's it about the pricing. It depends on the size of the organization and the requirements.
Okay. Wow. Wow. I never really looked at awareness for cyber security in organizations. This has only been protecting your personal information, your little bank accounts, your little Facebook passwords, but I didn't look at it into people actually phishing information from organizations and corporates.
Right. Yes. So that is a major issue, and it's happening all the time.
Yes.
And if your employees are not cyber aware, it could just be one mistake. So for example, there's certain types of malware that through a document that's just basically sent, and it could come from a genuine source, and you basically download that, and it's an executable file, and it can launch some serious attacks on a system's network, an organization's network. Just one mistake from an employee who's not cyber aware. So this is why it's super critical, because these are things that are happening. I have also trained organizations recently, entire institutions that had data breaches because they didn't even have a dedicated department in their organization that was specifically for cybersecurity. And also they had employees who weren't cybersecurity aware. So if they're not aware, then some of the concerns that may look genuine, they may actually end up falling for them, and it can be disastrous. I mean, millions can be lost. So it's obviously a very critical issue that organizations really need to start looking into. So we have a solution for that, in terms of cybersecurity, that helps organizations be fully aware. We have a training for that as well.
Okay, that's really nice. So your solution, is it cloud-based or is it cloud-based?
Yeah, it's in the cloud. Everything's in the cloud.
Software as a service.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
SaaS. Yeah.
Yeah.
Software as a service.
SaaS.
That's interesting when you say SaaS. Yeah, but that's it. Yeah.
Okay. Just hold on. I want to pause a little bit. Welcome back to the second segment. Joined with us is still Takunda Rukanda, and we are talking about Edutech technology in the education sector. So Takunda, I want to hear from you, what do you think is the future for technology and education?
It's quite interesting, and this may seem a bit like a paradox, but I think what we are doing now in terms of providing education solutions, I think in the near future, some of the concepts that we are putting out may not be so relevant, and I think that's primarily because of the advancement and the introduction of AI, artificial intelligence. Yes. And what we found is AI has continued to advance over the last couple of years. And I was reading an article a little while ago about a new AI solution that Elon Musk basically, just deployed. And you'll be amazed at what that kind of machine can do. And so right now we found that AI has started to become a part of almost every educational area. So whether it's law or whether it's medicine, we now have robots in all of those different areas that are making some of the jobs that before were extremely important much more irrelevant as we speak. So I think the future of education and technology is going to rest upon AI. It's going to have something related to artificial intelligence. I think in the future, instead of having an actual teacher, I think we'll have a robot. You go online and there'll basically be a robot or an artificial intelligence machine, and you're basically asking it questions relating to whatever area it is, and it will give you answers, and it will teach you, and then a new concept or a new area, and then it'll give you feedback. I think that's where we're gonna be going pretty soon. I think artificial intelligence is where we're basically going. So in terms of tech, I think that's basically something interesting and something to look into. But I think what we're going to see as well in the next few years is we're going to see a transition from the traditional ways of education. And I think a lot of education now is going to incorporate, online kind of ways of portraying. So we're going to have Edutech taking over this space. I think that's something to really look into. And I think if there are institutions who haven't started to think about it, or we're not thinking forward, I think that's something that they need to think about. And I think we're going to have a lot of these huge institutions actually migrating online. And I think we're going to see more and more of that, because it's been proven. As a result of COVID, we began to see that actually online education can work. It can also be effective. But I think it will be effective for maybe a few more decades. But I think what we're looking at in the future is maybe a total overhaul of some of these areas that we're actually going to school to learn. I think there's going to be an overhaul, and I think AI is going to take a huge part of that. And I think what's going to happen as a result of that, I think the emphasis is no longer going to be upon some of these hard skills, but I think what's going to be important are soft skills, because no matter how much you can teach a machine, even you can, and I know right now they're basically teaching machines to be empathetic, et cetera, but I think there's a human touch that you can't basically give this. I think social skills and soft skills are going to become critical skills in the future, and those people who can basically interact with tech in that end are going to become some of the most relevant. So I think that's where we're going, but it's very interesting to think about, and it excites me at the same time, but it could be a bit of an issue for certain people, because you find that after 4 years, your degree that you've been studying may not be as relevant. So I think that's also something that people have to think about. You need to be futuristic when you're looking at it, and tech is always advancing, and it's always moving, and it's always changing things. And there's always disruptors coming into this space. So many organizations, especially in the education space, have to start thinking about these things.
Okay, with AI robots, I would want it to be teaching me a particular skill, because I feel like a robot compared to a lecturer, a robot can actually assess the level of understanding compared to like a human lecturer who just throws the curriculum to you and you have to figure out yourself, do I need to read? Imagine your robot lecturer telling you, you need to work on this concept more.
Yeah, right.
Then the lecturer is just like, test, you failed, redo, they don't really like do that particular assessment.
Exactly.
And also where we can have AI, probably the medical space. Your doctor, if it's a robot that really knows exactly like what have you eaten, so what's the effect of this? If it's just like a human doctor, they ask you, how long have you been sick? Okay, it could be, they eliminate certain things. So a combination of both can work, should work really, but we should learn or now start trying to, embrace the idea of having robots in our space. Like we see these movies and then we think, this fiction movie, but it's not happening. It's coming up. It's coming up.
Right. It is happening, and a part of the push and what's thrilling, but also maybe a little bit worrisome is what big data, the capacity of what big data can do, predictive analytics and all of this. And now machines can learn faster. So machines now can learn, and whereas, for example, if you were to ask a question to a lecturer, and knowing this as an educator myself, I don't always know the answers. But a machine could, look into its database, could go online, fetch information, find information about that, whether it's a definition or something that's been there, and basically pick it out in a moment. And so, and then have it in a second. And I think we've started to see it. And I've worked in organizations in which I asked, for once, I asked one of, my superiors, I asked them for advice on something. They just say, Google it. And sometimes they didn't even know that, just say, Google it. And basically we would find solutions and answers on Google. So, I mean, it's very interesting, and we're starting to see that many of these companies that are collecting a great deal of data have also begun to really delve into data, big data, and have started to integrate that with artificial intelligence. And so what we'll find is that at a point, if you have, for example, an AI teacher, they could give you answers and solutions that your teacher might not be able to give you.
Yeah.
So that's because they have like access to a huge pool of data, so it's interesting to think about. It really is interesting to think about.
Oh, nice. Okay, so what can be the limiting factor for certain organizations or certain people to jump into this technology space?
I think there are a number of factors to consider. I think the first issue is cost. And for many organizations, making that step could be an issue because of cost. They simply can't, maybe afford it. And this is why what we do in our company is to provide solutions that cater to a broad range of organizations, from small organizations to larger organizations. And so I think that's one of the issues. But even still, when with discounted prices and subsidized prices, sometimes it's not even something that some organizations can have, and then for some it's just doubt. And we've seen it with so many different companies and organizations. When tech was going a particular way and they just relaxed, we saw it with Nokia, and what basically happened with smartphones coming into the picture and being rendered irrelevant. And so it's something that most organizations sometimes don't take note of, that the world is actually changing. And so many of them are kind of late to make the move. And by the time they make the move, they've really lost a huge part of the market share. So I think it's something that they need to really look into, become aware, and really think about, okay, because right now the future of training our employees in terms of some of the skills and some of the issues that may be critical for their job could be done online. I think that's obviously a solution, and that obviously would save time instead of having someone come and having to work someone. So they could actually integrate that into their entire training system. So I think that's also it. Doubt about what the future is going to hold. Doubt about whether or not, this edutech move or this edutech trend will have an impact on their organization. But I think many organizations are starting to catch on, and so many of them are starting to realize the importance of edutech and having it integrated into their system. And many organizations are starting to understand the power of big data and having a lot of information. And obviously that has also come with a lot of data privacy regulations, and the purpose of that has been to curb some of these issues, because some of the most dangerous companies, and I say dangerous in not in a very negative way, but as to describe the potential power that these companies could have, is big data. Those companies that are collecting data, analyzing data, to the end that they can actually predict what a customer wants before they even order something, and they can basically put that in your face, and you say, I've been thinking about this all this time. But they've been managing and looking into all your consumer behaviors, and they've basically navigated you and categorized you into a certain section, or a certain box. And so now they know what you're going to do, what you want before you even want it, and they just bring it up in your face. And I think many people are shocked. They're like, I was thinking about this, I was talking about this or something, but that kind of technology is now available. And big data is doing a lot to that end. So something to look into. And I think that's something that most organizations need to start thinking about.
Okay. So what do you suggest governments, schools, corporates, public, private sector should actually equip or prepare for them to be able to have this edutech space work effectively for them? Any extra needs that they need to work on, or something like that?
I think specifically, let me start with government. I think government needs obviously to set up the right infrastructure that will facilitate edutech to basically run smoothly, and the part of that could be infrastructure in telecoms, for example, and with the overall end goal of, for example, making data cheap, so that anyone can at any time go online and do a lesson online or do a live lesson. But if so many of these structures are not in place and data is expensive, it could lead to a huge lag. So I think government needs to come on board and basically be part of the process of setting up the infrastructure and putting incentives and actually pouring part of their budget into making sure that the infrastructure that will allow for many institutions or educational institutions to transition to learning online are in place. So I think that's critical. And I think for high schools and for universities right now, I think they need to really start thinking about how they can best, make the transition from, the traditional ways of learning to having, some of these edutech solutions, having state-of-the-art learning management platforms, because ultimately the effectiveness and the success of many of these organizations or these institutions in the education space, high schools, universities, will be determined by who has taken the first move and who has the most advanced ways of, for example, learning to design and develop courses, or who has the most interactive online learning platform, because that's where we're slowly going to. And if they can also look into AI and integrating AI into that entire system, I think that would do a great deal. And for private organizations, I think in terms of HR and specifically for HR departments, I think they need to start to look into migrating their training and taking their training online, for most of so that for most of their employees, and that will basically help them to standardize some of the processes that will be engaged and to equip their organization employees with the right knowledge that will allow them to navigate the industry better. So I think that's what all these institutions need to look into, and that's how they have to look at things.
I think it's also cheaper for the HR. There's no cost on catering. Hungry employees.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Precisely. It's cost effective. In the long term, it's cost effective and it can be beneficial. And it's standardized. So instead of hiring someone to come and train your employees in a particular subject, you hire professionals for the e-learning design and development process, and to even deploy a learning management platform for you. And then you just do all the training online, and everything is basically done online. And you standardize the process. In the long term, you're going to save on cost, and you're going to have standardized training. Everyone gets the same kind of training. And whenever you need to make upgrades and updates, that's probably the only additional cost that you would have, and maybe some hosting fees. So I think it's definitely something that's critical for most organizations to look into.
Yeah, I like the part where you say government should actually have these infrastructures in place, and also ensure that telecom is actually affordable, because currently what we are having teachers sending assessments or all these notes via parents' social media platforms like WhatsApp, and then the parent would then probably download and print or just give the phone to the child for them to read from there and then submit. I mean, social media already has its own disturbances that come up. You can't ignore it. You can't ignore a story. You can't ignore bad news coming through.
Right.
So
why you're on that platform? Yeah. So obviously having a dedicated platform specifically for that is good. And I don't think, going on WhatsApp, that kind of model is a very sustainable model in the long term. I think and also, I'm also a brain coach, and I think it's something that I've mentioned before. So I basically train people to learn faster, just like, the kind of techniques that are necessary, because I had learning challenges growing up, and basically made the transition to basically consuming information at a really fast rate. So I trained this. And it's not effective to basically have documents sent to a WhatsApp platform and then the student downloads and reads, because we need to look into the fact that not everyone learns the same way. People don't learn things the same way. And and we actually understand that because we're obviously into e-learning design and development. And we have to understand, number one, you have visual learners. These are people who learn by seeing stuff. So for example, videos, infographics, any types of images when they're learning helps them to remember more. And then you have auditory learners who basically learn more from listening and hearing someone relay information. And that's how they basically get knowledge faster. And then you have kinesthetic learners who learn through action. And these are the people who are really good even with sports, because they learn through different types of actions. And so what we do even in the e-learning design and development process is to make sure that we address all the different types of learners, the visual learners. So we have graphic designers who basically design, state-of-the-art graphics to ensure that whatever is being said is correlating with, the videos and the graphics that are being shown for the visual learners. And then we have, on audio, voiceover, which is professionally engineered so that the auditory learners can have that. And then we have exercises afterwards for the kinesthetic learners who have to do something in order for them to learn. So now if you're telling me that right now the majority of schools have adopted a system in which the students learn through voice notes and basically documents being sent, you've already lost a great percentage of the students. Yes. You've already lost them. And if they don't do so well, it obviously will affect the results that will come up at the end of the year, the final examinations, and they're not doing so well because they're not being taught the way they should be taught. So that's not a sustainable solution, and it doesn't work for everyone because it's only the auditory learners who benefit from voice notes and WhatsApp. And and then what happens to the visual learners? Maybe some of the graphics on this part that needs to be read, that could help. So I think that's not a sustainable solution. I don't think it's effective, and I don't think it's beneficial for the country's educational system as a whole. So I think that's something that really needs to be looked into. So I would advise many of these schools to make the decision. Go online, get a learning management platform, hire professionals to do the e-learning design and development process, have your courses in place, and ensure that you whatever you learn or whatever you teach to these learners applies to visual learners, auditory learners, and kinesthetic learners.
Okay, wow, that's very, very, very informative and interesting. I hope everyone is going to watch this. It's going to actually figure out what they've been doing wrong. And if there's any other solutions out there, guys, just comment down below. If there's anything that you'd want us to talk about as well, you can also comment down below. So Takunda, running away from the Edutech space, what other technology space would you want to jump into?
I think I'm looking into AI. Anything to do with AI, I'm looking into it. So app development, I really would love to delve more into app development, especially in the AI kind of area, so that's something I'm really, really interested in. And looking into that, obviously, because my passion is education, so the interaction between AI, I'm going back to the same thing, the interaction between AI and education. So that's something that I really want to look into, app development, particularly in those areas, and looking at the interaction between AI and education and seeing what kind of impact that's going to have. So I think those are I'm looking into anything AI. So whether that is healthcare, and working with professionals in the health sector to develop these types of applications, obviously IT experts and developers, software developers, to come up with solutions, artificial intelligence solutions in the education space, in the legal space, in the political space, and in various spaces. So that's where I'm looking into. That's where I would say my area of interest is for the future. But obviously, education and technology will always be my passion.
I was hoping you would say music.
Into the musical space. Oh, I love music. Music is my hobby, but it's not my life. Music is more of a hobby. I love music. Yeah, and I know my musical part and playing piano and different instruments and singing, etc., etc. But maybe I'll also look into that. Maybe I'll also look.
You're a lovely singer. You're downplaying it, and you're lovely singer.
I think I sing okay.
right. Thank you so much, Takunda, for joining us on Beyond TechSolutely. We will definitely want to hear from you about any other platforms that you might have. So you can kindly tell us where people can contact you, the name, the website, or anything that you have actually spoken about, your platform.
Okay, so people can, if they would like more information, they can obviously email me at takunda@taksglobal.com if they would like to, obviously have a conversation and look more into these issues. So that's takunda@taksglobal, TAKSA.com. And obviously I am on social media platforms. I'm on LinkedIn. So I would assume that most of the people that would want to basically have this conversation would be on LinkedIn. So Takunda Rukanda, they just search for my name. They can connect with me on LinkedIn, Takunda Rukanda, and on Facebook, they can connect with me. I also do have another, for those who would like to interact with me on a more social thing, I use my second name from Abinatha Nayal Genius. So they can, just look Nayal_Genius, and they can get in touch with me on there.
I'll write all the details down on the description.
Okay.
Another last question. Have you ever considered having a podcast?
A podcast? I haven't really thought about it, but it would be something that would interest me and would fascinate me. So I'll be open to that. I'll be open to kind of discussing some of these issues.
Okay, because just listening to you talk with so much passion and love for Edutech, I think a podcast would be a space for you as well to just educate us on certain things that we're doing right, doing wrong, as a nation, as parents, as people, employees who wants to learn more. So I think we'd have a podcast, and I would definitely subscribe.
You would subscribe and listen. Yeah, okay. So it's something I'll look into. I mean, if there are people out there who are interested in going into this kind of project with me, I mean, I'm definitely open to it. It's just I think there's a lot to say, and I think there's a lot that many people could benefit from.
Yeah, definitely. Any last words for Beyond TechSolutely, us, everyone?
I think you're doing a great job, and I think Beyond TechSolutely is basically doing a great service to basically the country and the continent. And thank you for having me. And I would encourage you to continue, and hopefully in the near future we can have a conversation and basically look back and say, hey, some of these things are things that are taking place, or in the near future, or whatever future it is. So thank you so much for having me, and I love what you're doing. I love your work, and best wishes.
Definitely have you in the next episodes, because we want to be able to see your platform and then everyone else see it from this. Thank you so much, Takunda. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Beyond TechSolutely. We'll see you again in the next video.